March Chapman, St. Peter's. And this program is really the result of the Cheshire Creation Care Group. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's a group we formed maybe 3 years ago, interfaith group that consists of St. Peter's, the Congregational Church, the Methodist Church, and the Temple. And we welcome any other faith communities that would like to join us, but this was born with that group. We're really, I'm not going to give speeches, of course, but we are really glad to have you here. Emma MacDonald from DEEP in state of Connecticut, who knows all of how this works, we hope, because I have found that here in our parish, it's a huge matter of confusion, and in my neighborhood, everywhere. So I asked Emma to be prepared for a lot of questions, and we'll see what she can help us understand. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you, Emma.
Hello, everyone. As March said, I'm Emma MacDonald. I'm from the State of Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, and the office that I work in is the Sustainable Materials Management Office. So we work on recycling, composting, just any other sort of waste stream that you could think of. And yeah, the next slide.
Oh boy.
Perfect.
So we have a whole pile of people coming in.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'll pause for everyone to take a seat. This is perfect.
Come on in.
Right before we get into the juicy stuff.
Sit in the front.
So, when I start these presentations, I like to talk about the solid waste management hierarchy. The solid waste management hierarchy is just a way that those of us who work in this field like to conceptualize, or actually to visualize the concepts that we use in our day-to-day work. So when we are managing our waste, there's different streams that our waste can go into, and we have a hierarchy for which waste stream is preferable. So at the top of the hierarchy, the first preference is waste prevention, because there's a lot of waste that we create every day that really isn't necessary, and that we could avoid by just making different choices. We also focus on reuse. So reusing our items before we send them to recycling or composting or the trash. And so next on our hierarchy is recycling and composting. So those are the big facilities that sort all of the stuff we throw in the recycling bin, and composting facilities. So some transfer stations have compost piles, and so those transfer stations are participating in the second level of our hierarchy. And then finally, we have WTE, which stands for Waste to Energy, which is basically a facility that burns our garbage in order to create energy and to reduce the volume of our garbage. And then landfill disposal is in the same level of the hierarchy. So first we want prevention and reuse, then recycling and composting, then waste to energy and landfill disposal. Next slide. So as you all may or may not know, in the state of Connecticut, we are currently facing a waste crisis. So we have a lot of waste that is being shipped out of state. And this happened because almost exactly a year ago, the Mira facility in Hartford, that was one of our waste to energy facilities, it burned about 1/3 of the entire state of Connecticut's municipal solid waste. So the stuff that you and I were putting in our garbage bins on the curb was going to this facility and being burned. But now this facility has closed, and it's been closed for a year, so we've been shipping all the waste that would have been burned there out of state, which costs a lot more and uses a lot more fuel for the trucks that ship it out of state. It's just a bad deal all around. Next slide. So, in order to combat the waste crisis, Connecticut DEEP, so our commissioner, in partnership with all of Connecticut's 169 municipalities, created the Connecticut Coalition for Sustainable Materials Management. So this coalition, the goal is just to manage our waste in a way that is sustainable for us and financially feasible. Next slide. And so the priorities for the coalition are to reduce waste, support reuse, recycle more, reduce contamination in recycling. That's a big one. It's a big reason why I think all of us are here today. Supporting food recovery, increasing food scraps collection, and implementing new approaches like unit-based pricing and EPR or extended producer responsibility programs. Next slide. So, unit-based pricing. Unit-based pricing is a way of paying for our garbage disposal. So the current method that almost all of the towns in Connecticut use is that we each pay a fee in our taxes to the town, a flat rate fee, and the town uses that money to dispose of our waste however they can manage. And it's a tough job. Unit-based pricing is an alternative method where basically if I am producing 1 bag of trash per week or per 2 weeks, and my neighbor is producing 3 bags of trash every week or every 2 weeks, right now with our system where we're paying the same amount in our taxes, I am paying for some of their garbage disposal. And that's not really fair. So UBP makes it so that I am paying for my 1 bag of garbage and they are paying for their 3. So it's a great way to get people to reduce the amount of waste they're producing, because if their bill is higher because they're throwing away more, they're gonna try to throw away less and prevent waste at the start. So that's unit-based pricing, and that's potentially on the horizon. And extended producer responsibility is another way that we can reduce our waste in the state. So basically, these are laws that are passed by our legislature that make it so that the producers of materials, so for instance, paint, the biggest picture on the screen, we have a paint EPR program in Connecticut. So what that means is all of the paint producers that sell paint in the state have created an organization that makes sure that the paint that we dispose of in the state through that program is disposed of properly and to the best possible outcome. And so basically these organizations have a big stake in making sure that their material is more easily disposed of because they're the ones who are disposing of it. So that's how an extended producer responsibility program works. As you can see in these pictures, we also have an EPR program for mattresses, gas cylinders. That one is not totally rolled out because it's a relatively new law, but that one's really exciting because gas cylinders are prone to explosion and they cause a lot of fires in facilities. And so they're really dangerous, and it's really great that we're going to be taking them out of our usual waste stream soon. We also have an EPR program for electronics, and there's a few more, but yeah.
I think we have a duplicate slide.
So this is actually just to show our newest program that was just passed in the most recent legislative session, which ended a few weeks ago, is a tire EPR program. So in coming years, we're going to not have as many tires illegally dumped on the side of the road, in the forests, and in just other terrible places. We've heard over and over again from municipalities all over the state that tires are just an awful problem, and our municipalities are facing the brunt of the costs for when people are dumping tires illegally. And so hopefully this EPR program will make it so that tire dumping will just stop happening completely and will be managed properly. So some recent initiatives that have been a part of the CCSMM's process include in Fairfield, they are collecting their glass separately from other recyclables at their town transfer station, and I'll explain why that's a big deal later, but it's a big deal. The glass is much cleaner. Wilton has zero waste initiatives in their schools. They're using reusable trays instead of the styrofoam throwaway ones. They're using food scrap collection methods, and they're using sharing tables. Sharing tables, if anyone isn't aware, are basically just a table, a designated table in the cafeteria at a school where students can place food items that they don't want to eat at lunch, and other students who may not have as much food as they want to eat can go to that sharing table and take whatever food is there. It's limited to food that is packaged, so it's sanitary to eat, or a thing like an orange where you have to peel it before you eat it. So, then we also have sustainable materials management grants. This is actually only the towns that were in the first wave of the grants, and the second wave has come out, so I need to update this slide. But West Haven, Middletown, Ansonia, Stonington, Seymour, Woodbury, Madison, Guilford, and West Hartford all have grant programs in place where they are collecting food scraps to be composted instead of just thrown in the garbage, which is a huge deal because our food waste makes up a very large component of our overall waste system, as we'll see in later slides. And Bright Feeds is a facility that is turning food scraps into animal feed. I actually got to tour that facility, I think 2 weeks ago, and they're doing really amazing work. They take all sorts of food scraps and are turning it into really healthy animal food. It's very cool. Next slide. And so all of this comes back to the solid waste management hierarchy, right? So every single thing that I just listed that these towns are doing is moving our materials up on this hierarchy in some way, shape, or form. And next slide. So that brings me to the zero waste hierarchy, as I like to call it. And you may recognize some of the R's on this list from the 3 R's, reduce, reuse, recycle. But you know, we're adults now, we're not in kindergarten anymore, so I figure we can handle a few more R's. So as you go down on the list, that sort of end of life for a product becomes less and less preferred. So basically, if you refuse an item, it's not going to be used in the first place, not going to be wasted. Avoiding waste right there, perfect. Reducing, so if you are having a party and you know you're only going to have 20 people there, maybe buy the 20 pack of utensils instead of the 100 pack. So we're reducing the amount of waste we're producing right there. Reuse, we all know that one. Just reuse that water bottle over and over again. Repair, when something you have that you really love and you like using breaks, go and repair it instead of just throwing it away because it's broken and replacing it. Repurposing, if something is broken beyond repair to be used as it was intended, you can make something else out of it. So that's a really good opportunity for DIY and artistry, which is awesome. And we can also rot anything that is organic. And finally, recycling for things that are not organic. And then after recycling is the garbage, but you know, we're avoiding that at all costs, so it's not on the list. Next slide. And so all of this is are tools we can use to form new habits. I know when I started my journey of trying to reduce the amount of waste that I was producing, I noticed a lot of habits that I had that were very wasteful. And I realized that I could make a lot of changes in my everyday life that would really improve my impact on the planet and everything around me. And so yeah, a few examples up on the screen. And next slide. So some examples of things that we can do to reduce food waste. We can make a list before we go food shopping. So instead of just, wandering down the aisles and buying whatever we want, like I tend to do still, we can make a list and stick to it and only buy what we need. Create a menu for a few days or a week in advance. Meal planning. Skipping down, freezing and labeling items before they go bad. Labeling things that I put in the freezer is very important because sometimes we'll pull something out and I'm like, what was this? Cannot tell until you reheat it. So a bunch of ideas. And when we're shopping, when we're doing our grocery shopping or any of our shopping for that matter, considering the 3 R's or the entire zero waste hierarchy if you really want to go crazy. So purchasing items that have less packaging, or purchasing items that are going to go to a higher end use on that list. So maybe buying, when you're buying yogurt, I know they have some yogurt pots that are glass now, so maybe you could reuse that glass jar instead of buying a plastic one, and reuse that glass jar for whatever your heart desires. And then there's a lot of single-use items that we can replace with reusable alternatives. There's, the upfront cost, but over time, as you use the item, each use becomes less and less expensive with reusables. My personal favorite is loose leaf tea. I used to not drink tea all that much, even though I love tea, and now because I have loose leaf tea, it's become more of a ritual and something that really makes me feel like I'm doing something good for myself. So, it's nice. We can also opt out of store-provided utensils when ordering takeout. If you're just going to take it home anyways and you have metal utensils at home, why not just bring it home and use your own utensils instead of taking the ones from the store or restaurant, and so on and so forth. Next slide, please. We can also reuse, share, and repair our items. So I don't know if you probably have a Buy Nothing page in Cheshire. Yeah, I love the Buy Nothing page. I have, a bureau that I've had forever, and the paint is now flaking off of the bureau, and so I need to repaint it, but I don't have a sander. So I went on my Buy Nothing page and said, hey, does anyone have a sander I can borrow for the weekend? And then I just had one, and it was great. So Buy Nothing pages are awesome. Sharing items. Libraries are also fantastic. I am really proud of the Wallingford Library, which is where I currently live, because they have all sorts of stuff that they provide to residents beyond even books. I believe they have tools you can rent out. They didn't have a sander, but that's okay. Asking your library to expand their offerings would be amazing, or maybe they already offer like cooking utensils and other stuff like that. And I know you guys also have a repair cafe in town, and that is fantastic. Great way to help people who might not be able to repair stuff themselves to get that done. Next slide. And finally, continuously learning about your recycling program. So you're all doing a great job. Nice work. We're all learning about how to recycle correctly. And this has just a list of different ways you can do that. And if you guys like this handout that's on the left, I have some up here so you can grab them. Next slide. It's all good, no worries. So, what is recycling? Next slide. So recycling is, as it says in the name, a cycle. So it consists of many steps that repeat over and over again. So what many of us think of as maybe the entire portion or just the first step is when we put our stuff in the recycling bin, the blue bin, roll it out to the curb, and then some guy takes it away in the truck, and then it's gone, and we've recycled. But no, there's a lot more steps in the process. So next slide. After it's taken away, it's brought to a facility known as a MRF, or Materials Recovery Facility. And at the Materials Recovery Facility, they just dump all the stuff on the floor, and then they sort it into piles. And then once they have the piles, they dump those piles on a conveyor belt, and then it goes through a whole bunch of steps and processes like a Rube Goldberg machine, and then eventually everything is sorted out. And next slide. Bailed to specification. So basically, once everything is sorted out into the different materials, it's put into these bales, which I don't know, have you guys all seen the movie WALL-E? Yeah, it's like what WALL-E is making. He's making those little squares of the material, and that's what our baled recyclables looks like, except it's not just a bunch of random garbage, it's sorted into different material types. And next slide, please. Once it's placed in its different material types, it is sold to end markets. So people who want that recyclable material and want to make it into a new product will buy it. And this example is what our milk jugs will look like. This is little plastic pellets. Next slide. And so then it's made into a new material, new product, like a milk jug. And next slide. Finally, the last step of the process, we buy that item, and then the cycle is complete and it can start over again, because hopefully whoever buys that recycled jug is going to again throw it in their blue bin, and it's going to go through the system again and again. And next slide. So that brings us to the idea of the circular economy. So this is something that I think about all the time when I'm doing my work. And basically this is the idea of keeping our materials in use and in the system in a cyclical or circular fashion for as long as possible. And so as you can see with this chart, reuse has the smallest circle, so it stays in the smallest area of use for the longest. Then we have remanufacturing and refurbishing and recycling, which take more steps in the process to come back to being used by a consumer. And next slide. And that shows why our zero waste hierarchy is in the order that it's in. So when we reuse an item, it stays in the consumer's hands. When we recycle something, it has to go all the way back to a facility where it's going to be remade however it's remade. So if it's plastic or metal, it's melted down and then made into a new item. And that all takes energy. And the transportation takes energy and fuel and money. So keeping our items in those smaller loops is great for everyone involved. It's better for the environment, it's better for the money we're spending, and so on and so forth. And yeah, one more slide. So now moving on to the boring part, recycling markets, because I love to prove that we are actually recycling our materials. They are being sold and bought by people. So our market conditions have been very up and down over the past few years. So I don't know if you all have heard of the national sword policy in China, but basically, I believe it was in 2017. Not totally sure on that one, so don't quote me, but I think it was in 2017. They passed a law that said they didn't want to take our recyclables anymore unless they had less than 10% contamination. And you know, contamination is anything that isn't actually recyclable being in our recyclables. And that was already a huge lift. So what we were sending them was not less than 10% contaminated. So they changed the rule and they said, okay, it needs to be less than 5% contaminated. So they got even more stringent. And so we continued sending them stuff that was more contaminated than they asked for. So they changed it to 1% and effectively said, we don't want any of your recyclable materials because it's contaminated, it's dirty, you're just giving us your garbage. And so that was a real hit to our markets at the time. But we've since found different markets and different places to sell our materials. And then in 2020, COVID hit. I think we're all well aware. And you know, COVID was pretty awful for, I think, everyone involved. We had a tough time with it, but for our recycling markets, it was great news. I don't know if you all remember at the beginning of the pandemic, we had a lot of people panicking and buying a lot of toilet paper. But as they were buying that toilet paper, we needed to replace it on the shelves. And one place we can get material to make toilet paper is our recyclable paper. So our paper markets shot up. And similar things happened in almost all of our markets when COVID hit. So, you know, one bright side to the situation. And now, today, we're facing some supply and demand issues, and inflation is causing our markets to have a worse time than they were having back in 2020. So, next slide. And here's the numbers. So we have, for our fibers, our papers, old corrugated cardboard and residential mixed paper. These prices are always high because paper is very valuable. It's a really recyclable commodity and it's well reused. So prices are doing pretty well right now. And next slide. We also have plastic containers, so there's a lot of different types of plastic. We have natural HDPE, which is like our milk jugs. And so that's an undyed HDPE. We also have colored HDPE, which is like a detergent jug, and those jugs are usually dyed bright colors. So they have fewer end uses because they've already been dyed a color and it's less reusable. We also have PET, which is what we would find in our water bottles and our juice bottles. Polypropylene, which is like our berry containers and yogurt tubs. And these markets tend to fluctuate a lot. Right now they're doing pretty well, so that's good. 2 slides back.
Sorry.
All good, no worries.
Am I okay, or
2 slides backwards.
backwards? Sorry.
Yeah.
Very quick.
Yeah, and so this one is our metal containers and our final slide of numbers, so we can all breathe a sigh of relief. We have aluminum cans and then we have steel. And so metal is very easily recyclable and very valuable, so those are doing very well right now as well. And to next slide. So how do we recycle? The next big question. So in Connecticut, we have a lot of different recycling and disposal programs, and you'll all probably recognize these two, which is our garbage and our blue bin recycling program. But we also have many more. Next slide. We have brush and yard waste composting programs. Next slide. We have composting programs for our food waste. As I said, in a lot of towns, they're doing pilot programs for curbside collection and transfer station collection and composting of food waste. Next slide. We have bulky waste pickup. Next slide. Textiles recycling. So I don't know if you guys have seen the containers on the sides of the roads. They're all for textile donation. Those are recycling and reuse programs. Next slide. We have our paint EPR program. Next slide. Our electronic waste recycling program. Next slide. And our plastic wrap program, which you may have all seen in grocery stores. They have the collection bins right at the front. And next slide. We have Oscar the Grouch because who doesn't love Sesame Street? And next slide. So that's everything labeled. Trash, brush, food scraps, mixed recyclables, bulky waste, textiles, electronic waste, plastic film, and paint. And next slide. So beyond the programs that we have implemented on a day-to-day basis, we also have the bottle bill program in Connecticut. And so the bottle bill was initially passed in 1978. So it's been almost 50 years that we have had the bottle bill program in Connecticut. But it was implemented in 1980. The initial purpose of the law was to reduce litter. And then in 2009, the program expanded to include water containers and was amended to send unclaimed deposits to the general fund instead of having them swimming around wherever they were. And then in 2021, so very recently, Public Act 2158 passed, which significantly modified the program. So next slide. So the containers that are included in the bottle bill are something that have changed the most, I think, throughout the years. So in 1980, the initial creation of the law, the included containers were beer containers, soft drinks, and carbonated mineral water with a 5-cent deposit. And then in 2009, they added water, still at a 5-cent deposit. And in 2021, the law added a whole laundry list of items. So we had hard seltzer, hard cider, plant water, juice drink, tea, coffee, kombucha, plant-infused drink, sports drink, or energy drink. And that list became effective in January of this year. So all of those items are now acceptable in the bottle bill program, whether or not it's listed on the container. You can return them in the centers at grocery stores, or if the centers are unavailable, at the customer service desks and at lots of return centers that we have in the state. Also in 2021, the law that passed increased the deposit to 10 cents, and that increase will go into effect in January of 2024. So in about 6 months, all of those deposits are going to double. And so we'll be that much more incentivized to actually return those bottles and recycle them. Next slide.
Oh, sorry.
All good. Yeah. So the miniature liquor bottles, I don't know if you guys have seen these on the side of the road as much as I have, but when I was making this slide, I couldn't find a good picture of a miniature liquor bottle on the side of the road, and so I walked outside my apartment and walked about 15 feet down the road, and lo and behold, there one was for me to take a picture of and add to the slide.
I could have sent you a picture. I
yeah,
picked up
so-
217 of them.
Yep,
all
so
in one
it's a
pile.
huge problem
Yeah.
in the state. And so Public Act 2158 was passed, which requires liquor wholesalers to assess a 5-cent surcharge. So this is a charge on miniature alcohol bottles to retailers. And so when those surcharges are collected by the wine and spirits wholesalers, they collect them, and then I believe it's every 6 months they return that money to the municipalities. So whatever municipality someone buys a miniature liquor bottle in, that 5-cent surcharge will go to the municipality for use in litter cleanup and recycling programs. So Cheshire has definitely received some money from this program, and so hopefully they're using it already to pick up litter and do those programs. But if they're not, you can go tell them that I told you this is happening and they need to work on it. And next slide. So the big question, I think why a lot of us are probably here, are we recycling wrong? Next slide. So unfortunately the answer to this question, at least in 2015, was not entirely. This graph is the composition of our single-stream recycling bins in Connecticut in the year of 2015. So the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection hired a consultant to do an assessment of what we were throwing in our recycling bins that year. And so this was the result. We had more than half was recyclable paper, 54%. We also had a lot of glass bottles, 17%, plastic bottles at 5%, other recyclable plastic at 2%, aseptic containers and cartons, which I'll go over what those are later. Also aluminum cans and steel cans, and then the big red pie piece in the room, contaminants. So that's all things that we did not want in the blue bins. That's all garbage. Stuff that should not have been in the blue bin program. And that made up almost 20%. Almost 1 in 5 of the items that were in our blue bins were contaminants. So, next slide. We want to change this. And one way we can do that is by looking at the composition of our municipal solid waste. So this chart shows what we threw in our garbage bins that year. And so as you can see, a large chunk of that is again paper at 23%. So a lot of that paper was probably paper that could have gone into the blue bin, into the recycling bin, and could have been recovered. We also have a lot of plastic, 11%. Also something that could have potentially gone into the blue bin. Metal, glass, food waste, and other organics making up around 30% of that whole pie, which is why food waste diversion is really important. It weighs a lot, it has a high moisture content, so it makes it harder to burn our garbage in waste-to-energy facilities. So removing food waste, great deal all around. Construction and demolition debris. Household hazardous waste made up a really small piece of the pie. Electronics, and then other wastes. So a lot of this chart is recoverable in the blue bin program as well. Next slide. And so, all right, show of hands. who here uses the recycling arrows to decide whether or not to put something into the blue bin? Yeah, so I am the bearer of bad news. The arrows mean nothing. They won't tell you whether or not something belongs in the blue bin. They really don't mean anything. And the reason that they're hidden, like on the bottom of a jar, and you really have to search for them, is because they don't want you to look for them. They don't want you to be deciding whether something goes in the bin based on the arrows. All the arrows mean is the resin identification code. So it means the exact chemical makeup of that container that you're holding, which does not determine whether or not the item goes in the blue bin. So next slide. Yeah, that one's always a doozy. Recycling. It is the law in the state of Connecticut. Whether you may or may not have known this, but we are required to recycle in the state of Connecticut. So this is quiz. What year do we think that Connecticut passed legislation mandating that certain materials be recycled? So, was it in 1975, 1989, or 2012? So, show of hands for A, 1975. All right, show of hands for 1989. And show of hands for 2012. All right, so this was a little bit of a trick question because the law was updated in 2012. So those of you that raised your hands then, you might have seen a law that passed in 2012, but that was an update. The original law passed in, I believe, 1975. So Connecticut was really ahead of the program, ahead of the times when we passed that law, and that was really exciting. Next slide, please. So what items are actually designated for recycling? What are we mandated to recycle by law in the state of Connecticut? So everything on this page, but next slide. The items that we are likely responsible for is what's in this blue box. And that is what is supposed to go into our single stream or blue bin program, mixed recycling program.
I'm sorry, I thought you said next slide, but you didn't.
Oh, it's okay. And so, as you can see, in bullets 2 and 3, we have our resin identification code listed, but that just goes to show that this law was passed in 1975. It's a very old law, and it's outdated. The resin identification codes truly have no bearing on whether or not an item goes in the blue bin. But what is supposed to go in the blue bin is glass and metal, food and beverage containers, plastic containers, corrugated cardboard, box board, newspaper, magazines, and white and colorful office paper. Everything that is in this orange section is also mandated recyclable, but I personally am not producing that much motor oil, so I don't really have to worry about that mandated recyclable. Scrap metal, rechargeable batteries, waste oil, leaves, lead acid batteries or motor vehicle batteries, and commercially generated, source-separated organic materials. Try saying that 5 times fast. Those are all mandated recyclables in the state, but we don't really have to worry about them as individuals. Next slide, please. So, this graph is very busy, but basically what it shows is how many new items are being placed on shelves in our grocery stores and our supermarkets on a yearly basis. So this is only new items. So on top of everything that was there the year before, this many items were added to shelves. So in 2020, that number was more than 20,000. Next slide. And so that just goes to show that recycling can be really difficult because we might buy a new product and then we look at that packaging after we've used the product and we say, okay, what am I supposed to do with this? Where is this supposed to go? And the answer is not always clear, and things are brought to mine and my coworkers' desks all the time that are brand new, and we're like, okay, we have to go figure this out now because there's so many new items every single year. And so we do have tools that can help us to recycle right. So one of those tools that my office is really proud of is the Recycle CT Wizard and app. So the Recycle CT Wizard is basically a tool that you can use where it's a search engine, and you can type in whatever item you have into that search engine, and it'll come back to you with what disposal or recycling program in the state that item belongs in. So it's a very powerful tool. You can type in whatever you have, and it'll tell you the answer of where it should go. And if it doesn't, if it happens to not have the answer, you can submit that item as a question, and me and my coworkers will look at it and try to get an answer onto the page for you. And so it's available as an app and also as a widget that your municipality might put on their webpage or on recyclect.com, just through the internet. And so the Universal List in Connecticut. The Universal List is what that wizard is based on. So basically in 2015, we had our waste characterization study where we saw that almost 20% of our blue bin materials were not actually blue bin materials, they were contaminants. And so we said, okay, we need to make a big change. We need to do some education. We need to help people to understand what goes where, what belongs in which program. And so DEEP and Recycle CT launched an outreach and education campaign. And the list that the Recycle CT app and wizard is based on was created in 2017. So 2 years after the study, they created the list. Next slide. And so in order to create the list, they basically brought all the stakeholders together and they asked, what materials are we able to process in our recycling facilities? So in our MRFs, our material recovery facilities. And then what materials are detrimental to our MRFs? So what items are harmful to employees or present a safety concern? What items can shut down or harm equipment? And finally, what can reduce the value of our commodities if it is in the blue bin? So, next slide. So, from our list, we have some Mythbusters. So these are commonly asked questions, and I'm gonna have you guys guess before I tell you the answer. So, loose bottle caps, do we think that they go in the blue bin or in the garbage bin? So, blue bin, raise your hand. Loose. If it's loose, not on the container. Okay, so next slide. It is out. It is not in the blue bin. If it is loose from a container. If it's screwed onto a container, it can often go in, but if it's loose, out. Next slide. Coffee pods. So if you use like a Keurig machine and you have a pod that you put in the coffee, can that go into the blue bin? Yes or no? Thumbs up, thumbs down. All right, so next slide. It is indeed out, you are correct. And next slide. Shredded paper. Is it in or out? Okay, I'm seeing mixed for this one. All right, so this is a big reveal. Next slide. Shredded paper is out, unfortunately. Shredded paper, it is made of a material that is recyclable. But shredded paper poses an air quality risk for employees in materials recovery facilities because the material that comes off of the shredded paper makes the air really difficult to breathe. And so not having shredded paper in our blue bins makes it so much safer for the workers at these facilities. You can go to a shredded paper event where they will collect shredded paper to actually recycle it. But those are very specific events held on a municipality basis. And so, yeah, keep it out of the blue bin, but if there's a specific program for it or a specific event for it, that's great. We can recycle our shredded paper that way separately. And so, pizza boxes, what do we think? Are these in or out? Okay, so next slide. Pizza boxes are in.
Even if
Yeah.
it's pizza stuff?
So if it has food on it, not in. But grease is okay. I don't know who said that, but grease is all right. They can take a greasy pizza box. It can't be like drenched, but if you have like spots of pizza grease, it's okay. Usually when I order pizza, it has the box and then it has like another circle.
Yeah.
I usually, personally, I throw the circle away because that usually has stuff stuck to it, but the box is fine because it's not usually contaminated enough to cause an issue. So pizza boxes are in. Plastic bags, wrap or film, what do we think? Are they in the blue bin or out of the blue bin?
Some of them say, no, they don't.
Out.
Okay, so next slide. They are out of our blue bin program. So as I said earlier, they have some wrap programs at grocery stores where they can accept some of these materials. But in our blue bin, we do not want any plastic film of any kind.
Do those really get recycled though, they collect at the grocery store?
I'll answer, you can say that to the end. I'll answer it at the end. So the next question, so expanded polystyrene, which we all probably know as styrofoam, do you think it's in or out of the blue bin? Yeah, so next slide, it is out. Styrofoam we cannot include in our blue bin program. It's just hard to work with. Next slide. So black plastic containers, are they in the blue bin system or out of the blue bin system? All right, so next slide. Yeah, black plastic containers are out. And the reason is because our containers, as they're being sorted, when we're sorting out our plastic containers, the way that is often done is with what's called an optical scanner. So they have a machine that has a camera that's looking down at the belt as all these items are going by, and it looks at the items and it can say, okay, that belongs in this category and that belongs in this other category, and black plastic is almost always sorted incorrectly. So it ends up just contaminating whatever recyclable stream it has been placed in accidentally by those scanners. There is hopefully technology on the horizon to place watermarks on these containers so that the optical scanners are better able to identify them and place them in the correct place. But for now, we do not want these in the blue bin and they belong elsewhere. Hopefully reused, but maybe in the garbage. So in summary, this is everything we went over. Mostly out, but the pizza box is a win. And next slide. So our top 5 contaminants in our mixed recycling, so the top 5 items that we found in that 20% of the pie, that red 20%, was plastic bags, loose bottle caps, like we went over, shredded paper, bagged materials, so beautiful, clean, well-sorted recyclables that were just placed in a plastic bag before they were placed in the recycling bin. We don't want that, that's a huge contaminant. And then also tanglers, which includes garden hoses, hangers, clothing, other stuff like that. Next slide. And so bagged materials. Can any of you guys tell which of these bags contains recycling and which contain trash? No, I can't either. And neither can the people who are on the sorting lines in the materials recovery facilities. So when they're doing their jobs, when they're seeing all of this material come down the belt, they're the first line of defense, and they're pulling stuff off that does not belong in our recycling streams. And so if they see a bag coming down the line, they're not checking whether it's filled with nice recyclables or garbage. They're just gonna throw it all out because those materials will cause that bagging material will cause problems down the line. So yeah, do not bag your materials. Next slide. So plastic bags and other film in Connecticut MRFs. So this picture is of a machine in a materials recovery facility in Connecticut. And this entire section that you can see inside the green parts should be all black because the machinery is black. But what you're actually seeing on there is all plastic film and plastic bags that weren't sorted out and picked out by the first line of defense and that got caught in the machines. And so at the bottom of the picture, that giant yellow spot, that is a human being who works at this facility and who had to jump into the machine physically to cut off all of that material from the machine that was gunking it up and slowing it down. And so next slide. that is all the material that he pulled off in 15 minutes of standing in the machine and just cutting material off. And so this all takes time. They had to turn off this machine that does their sorting of their materials for 15 minutes. So that's 15 minutes of sorting time that they lost, and that's a lot of money that they lost out on because they had to clean up the machine because their material was contaminated. Next slide. So again, please do not bag your recyclables. It causes a lot of problems down the line. Next slide. And this is also why quality matters a lot. There's a lot of different effects when we have contaminants in our blue bin. Next slide. So glass. Why is it so great that a few municipalities in Connecticut are collecting their glass separately? This picture hopefully shows why. So this picture is of glass after it's been sorted at a materials recovery facility. I don't know about you guys, but most of that picture is not glass. And this is after it's been sorted. So this is what they have to use to melt down to create into new glass items. So next slide. A few of the things that I noticed in this picture and that we see all the time in our glass at MRFs, pens, pencils, markers, tampon applicators, toothbrushes, lip balm, toothpaste, batteries, razors, bottle caps, craft jewelry, nail polish, coffee pods, squeeze nozzles, pharmacy bottles, and plastic utensils, and much more. So, next slide. Some other items to keep out of the recycling bin. Actually, can you go back a slide? So, the reason that the glass is sorted this way, the why, is because when we sort glass at a materials recovery facility, it's the last thing that's sorted out at the facility. After all the plastic has been sorted out, after all the metal, after the paper, finally they get to glass. And through the process, most of the glass has been broken into small pieces, and so a really good way they've found to sort out glass has been by just using a grate. Just pushing all of the material through a grate, and whatever goes through is glass, and whatever doesn't is not glass. And so those grates are about 2 inches by 2 inches. It's about the size of a credit card, if you just cut a credit card into a square. And so anything that will fit through that 2 inch by 2 inch grate is going to be considered glass at the MRF. So all of these things that I found on this list are smaller than that 2 inch by 2 inch square, and so it contaminates the glass. So anything that's small, that's that size, that is not made of glass, does not belong in the blue bin. So that is one of the reasons why loose bottle caps are such an issue, because they're small and they go through the grate, and now there's plastic in our glass stream. So next slide. Some other items to keep out of the recycling bin include batteries. Sometimes batteries like to cause fires, and so we do not want those. Syringes. We have had many workers in facilities get stuck by syringes as they're sorting out materials, so it's a huge health hazard. No syringes. Propane tanks, as we've heard, they're prone to explode. Ammunition, if you believe it, we see ammunition. Lawnmower blades, especially during the summer, we see a lot of lawnmower blades, also very dangerous and sharp. Knives or other utensils, whether metal or plastic, the plastic will contaminate the glass and the metal is just dangerous. Diapers, just gross. And also tampon applicators, yet again, pretty gross, and also will go through and contaminate the glass. So none of this in the blue bin. And next slide. So if I leave you with anything today, I hope that you take away that when you're thinking about where to put an item, you think about not whether or not the material that that item is made out of is recyclable, but whether or not that item is acceptable in the program that you are working with. So what is made of recyclable material doesn't always translate to, oh, it goes in the blue bin. And next slide. It's quiz time. Let's do it. So I have many items back here. So the first one that I like to go over, and this is just a reminder for you guys, is this in or out? Thumbs up, thumbs down. In, out. Yes, pizza boxes. It's in. And my coworker is from New Haven, so we have an ID card New Haven. Another review, in or out? Yes, out. Black plastic, can't be recognized by the ocular scanners. So these are what we call spiral wound containers. A nice mouthful, but basically your oatmeal containers, your nuts, your chips. Do we think that these are in or out?
I would say no for the printables and the peanuts, but the oatmeal, you can take the plastic off and do that.
You are exactly right. Well done. Kudos. If I had a sticker, I'd give it to you. So these are made with multiple materials. So this has cardboard, metal, plastic, all in one container, and it's just a nightmare. If you wanted to recycle this, you would just have to tear the whole thing apart, and no facility has the time or resources to do that. But with this oatmeal container, it's only cardboard except for this plastic ring. So you pull the plastic ring off, and then you recycle the cardboard. And the plastic ring can go in the garbage, and the cardboard can go in the recycling bin. So great work. Okay, so the ice cream container, what do we think? In or out?
It's a coating.
So unfortunately, ice cream container is out. Doesn't matter if you take the plastic off or not. The material is made with, what I was told is it has a wet strength that causes it to not be recyclable. I don't know the chemistry behind it, but that's what I was told. It's just, I believe, again, too hard to take apart and get all the components apart. Yeah. So anything like paper plates that has that wet strength so that you can have like wet materials on it to eat is going to be out. Two different types of milk containers, the jug and the carton. Carton, is it in or out?
In.
Okay, so this is in. Yeah. So the cartons are in, even though they look difficult. I wish I knew the answer to why these are in and the ice cream container is out, but I really can't tell you. I don't know why, but these are in.
But you have to take off the plastic.
You don't have to take it off. They can just take it as is. Again, I really don't know why they can handle these. I'm not.
Because there's so many of these, they decided they can take them, whereas the ice cream containers,
Yeah.
there's this whole thing with a bale specification, and the ice cream containers are enough of them to, where they're creating their own bale of it, they can create enough, like a whole bale of those beverage containers. That's what it's all about.
That sounds believable to me, but yeah. So this is in, ice cream container is out, unfortunately.
It's out.
And so the jug, what do we think? In or out?
In.
Yes, this one's in. This
Take
is
the
very
cap-
solidly
take the
in.
cap off, right?
The top you can leave it
That's
on and it's okay, but if it comes off, the top should go in the trash and this should go in the recycling. But
Yeah, because
It
it's gonna be compressed.
it usually won't come off, is what I've been told by the facility operators. But yeah, it's up to you whether or not you want to include
Crush it
this
first
on
and
the
put it on.
materials, but if it's loose, this should go in the garbage and this should go in the blue bin.
In Cheshire, when they pick it up, if it's in a compact vehicle, it's not gonna stay.
Alright, so we have two different egg cartons. Is this one in or out?
In.
Yes, this one's in, cardboard. This one. Yeah, styrofoam. not in at any time. Doesn't matter what shape it is, styrofoam is out.
Can I ask a question on the egg thing?
Yes?
The cardboard one, is that compostable?
So it depends. So this one has a sticker on it that the glue on it might not be great for your compost. And also some, if you have a sticker or a piece of paper that's super shiny, sometimes they're coated with a small layer of plastic to make them shiny. So what I would do is I would try to buy without a sticker, first off, so that it's all just the cardboard, and this stuff is all, that would be fine for your compost.
Okay.
But yeah, if you have a sticker,
Just like separated.
yeah, just try to take it off as best you can. And then if you want to check and see if it has the sort of plastic lining, sometimes you can sort of rip it a little bit and then just pull it apart and the plastic will like stretch off and you can see it. So that's what I like to do if I have a shiny container and I'm like, I suspect there's plastic on there. And sometimes I won't put that stuff into the blue bin. So, 2 different types of jugs. What do we think about this one? In or out?
No. It's out.
Okay, so we have some different answers for this one. This one is in, and it can be in as is, but it would be greatly appreciated if you wanted to take this wrapping off before you put it into the blue bin. You can put it in with the wrapping around it, and they can handle it, but it's very helpful if you can take this wrapping off. And the wrapping would go in the garbage. Yeah. So this container, what do we think? Yeah, this is in. This is very solidly in. The sticker is fine. Again, if you want to take it off, you can, but the sticker will cause fewer problems than this wrapping will.
What about washing the inside of these things?
Can you repeat that?
What about washing the inside of them?
So usually for washing containers, a quick rinse is fine. When you have something like peanut butter, usually my coworker likes to say give it to your dog. But if you don't have a dog available to you, I usually just soak it in water and then rinse it afterwards, because they power wash pretty much everything at the facilities, so it's usually enough to just give it a rinse. But peanut butter does take a little bit of extra doing. I can do a few more materials, or I can take questions.
Could you do materials I brought?
Of course, yeah. I'm just gonna take this stuff. Yeah, okay, so.
I wanna know, because I thought it was about the numbers.
So did I.
Yeah, the numbers unfortunately really mean nothing for whether or not it goes into the blue bin. I am not sure about that. I can ask my coworker.
I feel like they
They
say
like to take 1 to 7. They used to say you only take 1 through 7, and then like the question always was like, is there really like for polystyrene and low density, or are they really like for the end market this way? Because you have to
Yeah.
sort it, there also has to be an end
But we
market.
just need to know now.
Yeah.
Yeah, right now the wisdom is just don't look at the arrows because they really don't tell you whether or not something can go in the blue bin. Okay, so this item, it seems to be plastic on the top and then metal on the bottom. So this is really interesting. I've actually never seen something like this before.
That came from Big Y, and
Okay.
they put like a prepared fish dish in there that you could take it out and put it in the oven. So yes, I was like, okay, what do I do with this?
Yeah. So my very tentative guess would be that these can go in the blue bin, both pieces, but separately. So separate the plastic from the metal and then put them both in the blue bin. But this is something that I have never seen before, so I'm definitely gonna ask my coworker about it. Yeah, thank you. I will, a donation for my bin. So yeah.
See, it's in the bin. How about the blue topped bananas?
Yeah, I'm gonna grab everything over here. Yeah.
I'm special. We get to do that.
Okay, so this beautiful feta crumbles bin. Does anyone have a guess? In or out? In. Yeah, this would be in. This is definitely in. If you want, you can separate the top from the bottom and just put the bottom in, but they should both go in together and will work fine. So next we have these two clear plastic clamshell containers. In or out?
In.
Yes, a resounding yes, these are in. Hopefully everyone knows the answer to these two by now. Out, yes, good work. And this item? In, yep.
So, can I ask what, so, we can't use the numbers.
No.
So we assume that all rigid plastic is in?
So
Clear, rigid plastic.
what you should be looking for when you are deciding whether or not to recycle something is if it is a container, like a clamshell container, the shape matters more than the material. So if it's a jug or a bottle or a container, it's in. If it's just a really weirdly shaped piece of plastic, like if you took the lid off of this, that's not something that their sorting facility is prepared for, is just like a weird shaped lid to a container. So this would probably be sorted incorrectly, and so they don't want stuff that's just shaped out of the ordinary. So it's bottles, jugs, containers, clamshell containers, cups, as we have right here. So what do we think of this one?
The cup, not the straw.
Yeah. So the cup and the lid, if the lid is attached, I believe, can go in, but the straw is out.
Sometimes the cover is a different number than.
Doesn't it matter?
Okay, so this cup, does anyone have a guess?
Out.
Yeah, this is out, because it's again that wet strength of the material. This one is out. And the solo cup, the plastic cup. Yeah, this is in.
I am shocked.
Yeah. By the wet
I'm sure we
strength.
weren't allowed to do that a long time ago.
I am too.
I'm ready, I'll do it.
I had stacks of them.
We
And
have,
they didn't know what to do with
in
them.
our boys' lives, yeah, and I don't have
Okay, so we have another sherbet container. Out, yes.
which I think should be.
We're learning quickly. Well done. And this cardboard container. So this is in. It's cardboard. They can sort it. They can use it. It's in. It does have a how to recycle
So how to
logo.
recycle logo is like this new thing that companies are opting into to
Yes.
inform consumers on how to recycle. So it's on some packs, but it's not on everything, so okay, yeah, look for that. It's like voluntary, but a lot of new companies are doing it now.
So this, the how to recycle label on this, I can pass this around so you can all look at it. But it's this little black and white symbol at the bottom that actually uses the recycling arrows. So these are recycling arrows you should pay attention to. But the ones with the numbers, the resin codes in the middle, don't care. Don't look at those. So this one says that it is number 1, a paper box. Number 2, I think on the inside, a paper bowl. And then number 3, a multi-layer seal, which I'm guessing was on top of the bowl that was in there.
That's actually not mine, it's the guy who works here and he was eating, so we took it.
Look at that. And so that seal that was on top of the actual food, that is not recyclable, but the rest of it, they say is. And the way that they designate at the with the how to recycle symbols is, I believe, 66% of facilities accept that material. So it's not foolproof, but it's very likely that the material is recyclable in your program. And this is. So I can pass it around for people to look at the symbol. Okay, and this is a very, this isn't a question, this was just being used.
Twist tie for
our extension cord.
Perfect. I was gonna say, this is really weird. I'm hoping no one was gonna put this in the recycling bin. 'Cause this would be a tangler. Okay. And I think everything else over in that corner is a little bit redundant, unless anyone has a question about.
How about the little cup?
Oh, the little cup,
Yeah,
okay.
because I like those little cups, but I don't wanna buy them if they're not recyclable.
This little cup, I believe, would be acceptable in the blue bin, but this is something I would have to research. I believe this would be in though. I'm confident enough that I'm telling you that I think it's in. I'm like 10% unsure. But this is very likely in.
Take it with you.
Oh yeah. I'll definitely ask my coworker about it. Okay, so we can move on. Actually, no, 2 more things. Garden hose. Yeah, out. This is a tangler, so it would potentially break the machines that they have in the facilities. And this metal hanger. Yeah, this is out.
Collection, you could go in metal collection.
Oh, and scrap metal?
Like a scrap, like, I used to work in the city of Hartford,
Mhm.
like a metal dome. So you can-
Yeah, so if someone is collecting metal separately, and they say that they can take, metal hangers, then these would go in that program, but not in our blue bin. And actually, this is the last thing I'm gonna ask you about. Lotion bottle, do we think this is in, or do we think this is out?
Oh, wait, without the lid.
Okay, so we have a lot of confusion on this one. So this is in, and it's in as is, or if you want to be very helpful, again, to the people who run the facilities, you can take the top off, throw the top in the garbage, and only give them the bottle. And this would also be another just quick rinse. Once you've used everything from it, just quickly rinse it, and then it can go in the blue bin.
But isn't that PET? I think it's a colored PET, or colored, there's no market for colored PET. Like if it was, and a lot of lotion bottles most of them are HDPEs, but like the PET.
Yeah, the markets are what the markets are, but this is in. They will take it. Because as I mentioned earlier, we are required by law in the state to recycle our materials, and so we are required to recycle that. So they do take whatever they can of materials like that. Okay, so I'll open it up to questions. And
I
yes,
just have a quick question on that lotion bottle.
yes.
I tend to cut my lotion bottles in half when they get really low because you can't get the rest of it out. And I'm digging out from the bottom. Can you recycle it if it's been cut?
That's another good one. I would probably say no, just out of caution. But that's something where if you wanted to email me, I could get back to you on it and ask my coworkers and see if they have an opinion.
Because I like to get the very last bit out.
Yeah, oh, I totally get it. Yeah, what I usually do actually is I'll take the top off of a bottle and then put it upside down in another container and then just let it sit for a week. Yeah.
After that's all been done.
Yeah,
Then I
okay,
go.
yeah. Yeah, yes.
I just have sort of a generic question. We were talking about all of these things that, you know, that we put in the blue bin, and it's a single stream process at the MRF to separate it and do stuff with it. Are there things that we could possibly do to improve the process? If we go back to the old-fashioned style of recycling and take it to our closest transfer station, I don't know, so something at random, somebody figures out how to recycle garden hose. If we all separate our old garden hose and bring it to the transfer station, are there things like that that could be added to the process that
Yeah.
we do the work?
Yeah, so that is one of the things that our EPR programs do. So mattresses, prior to their EPR program, those were just going into the landfill or the waste to energy facility. But now that we have the EPR program for those, they take apart the mattresses and they recycle whatever they can from the mattresses. So things that are difficult to recycle, like that, we will hopefully be creating programs for. But we also have those places like Fairfield that are collecting their glass separately from their other recyclables. They have pristine glass that can be used to make into new items, whereas the rest of the glass, as you saw, is just so many other things. So there's a lot of ways that we can improve our system, and we just need to make it known that that's what we as citizens want, and then eventually it'll happen. But right now, the system as is what's been fought for by whoever has been fighting. And so, that's how it works. Whoever speaks the loudest, whoever has the most momentum, whatever this system is that they're promoting, that's what we're gonna have. So push for whatever you're thinking, yeah.
Cooking oil containers.
Yes.
I mean, even a quick rinse, there's still always gonna be more oil in there.
Yeah, so I think I mentioned earlier, usually at the facilities, they're power washing everything. And so normally a quick rinse by you is all that's
Like
needed.
those big olive oil containers with a little opening?
Yeah,
Okay.
usually just a rinse is fine. Like use as much as you can and then rinse it. It does sort of seem magical that they can get the oil off of stuff like that, because it really just does not want to get out of those containers. But they can take them. So, yes.
What percentage of the items that are collected in the blue bins are actually recycled and turned into new materials, new products?
So, how much of the items that you place in your blue bin? So it depends on a lot of factors. So first thing is it depends on whether or not you bagged those recyclables, because if anyone has been bagging their recyclables, that stuff's just being thrown out. So 100% of what is being bagged and put in the recycling bin, that's not being recycled, that's just thrown out. It also depends on how much other contamination is in your blue bin. If you have enough contamination in a load that goes to a materials recovery facility, sometimes they will just throw out whatever is too contaminated. And so I really don't have a perfect answer for
But
you.
if it's perfectly sorted so that everything in the blue bin is clean, the proper item, there's zero contamination of those materials, what percentage are recycled?
So the entire truck that has collected everything in your neighborhood, everything is perfect and clean and sorted. In an ideal world, if the system is functioning as it is meant to, as it is supposed to, all of that will be recycled. If it's all stuff that is meant to be in our blue bin program, that's been sorted correctly, it's clean, there's no contaminants, all of that would be recycled.
So there is a demand for all those materials?
Yes,
So
yeah,
the market-
we have markets for them, we are selling them, they have
So those
value.
clamshell, so those all get turned into new clamshell?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, they are bought and created into new products. Yes.
Yes, so on the list is appliances. So if you have a window air conditioner or a dehumidifier that has Freon, most places won't take it. What do you do with it?
Most what places?
Like if I took it down to Sims, they won't take it because it's got Freon. If I take it to the transfer station, they won't take it. 'cause
Oh,
it's Freon.
interesting. Most transfer stations, I believe, usually do take Freon devices, but that is not something that I'm an expert in, so that's something I could ask my coworker about and get back to you on places to bring those. I know that my transfer station does take those, because I did a tour there about a few months ago, and they had a little section where they just had all of the Freon devices just like sitting in a refrigerator graveyard. It was very funny. But yeah, so most transfer stations, I believe, take them, but I don't know the intricacies of those rules.
Wallingford does so much better than Johnson. Cheshire would do way better.
Yeah,
It's done
yeah.
almost nothing.
Hopefully, we'll get there. I've been mostly going with people in the center, but I've seen hands in my periphery. Yes.
I
I've heard a lot about trucks coming into the, recycling center and then getting turned away because their, whole load was contaminated. But the way you describe it, it doesn't sound like that really would ever happen. It would have to be taken out and determined if the load was contaminated.
Hartford's
How-
trucks have gone to the recycling center and they've been
How-
sent away right
Yeah,
away.
how does that happen and what, does that really happen and what's that all about?
Yeah, so I have actually heard of trucks being turned away from transfer stations. One of the reasons that I've heard behind it is frankly just the temperature of the material. I think there was a transfer station that was nervous about the material that was in one of the trucks catching fire and causing a fire in the facility. I don't know the validity of that claim, but that's one thing I've heard. I'm sure that contamination levels would also play a factor. Like if you get up onto a truck and look in the bed and all you see is garbage, I don't know if I would be accepting that into my facility if I was running a materials recovery facility. So yeah, there's, I'm sure, many reasons that they might reject loads, and those are just two that I have either heard about or can think of. But yeah, hopefully our materials are getting where they're supposed to go and ending up where they're supposed to be. Yes.
Yeah, can we recycle paper towels?
Paper towels are out. Even if they've just been used with water, they're usually going to be contaminated no matter what. So yeah, no, paper towels. Yes.
Maybe you mentioned, what about aluminum foil?
Aluminum foil is only in if it is absolutely clean. So my general rule is if the aluminum foil has ever touched food, it's out. But if it's totally, completely clean and dry, the aluminum foil is in. And they prefer that you don't like ball it up or mash it together, because if you do that, they're like, we don't know if there's water in there or if there's food in there or how well this has been cleaned. So they would prefer just throw it in as a sheet so they can see that it's clean. And yeah, only very clean aluminum foil. And you have a question?
I could, a million questions I could talk to y'all.
Oh, yeah.
But two before I forget, not to be nice. No, 'cause I've worked at the transfer station in Hartford for a long time. Tires are huge. People don't, why it's hard. But anyways, that's a different subject.
Yeah.
What is the state for who can do something about, like, didn't Maine outlaw styrofoam, like with the black containers? Can't you get the manufacturers, just use a different color? Why not? Can't you start at the source?
Yeah, it just feels like common sense to not purchase what we can't recycle. But it really just depends on how loud the voices are that want those materials to not be used anymore because they're not recyclable. There is, I believe Stanford actually does have an ordinance that bans styrofoam. So that's one municipality in Connecticut that has gone down that route. I personally would love to see more municipalities and maybe even the state legislature go down that road and ban those materials that are so hard to recycle. But yeah, it really just depends on momentum and if your elected officials are hearing that that's what you want from them. So yeah, I would love to see that as well. Was that one question or was that?
I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Yes.
The markets for material that goes through the MRF, are those domestic mostly, or are they foreign now?
Yeah, so we have both domestic and foreign markets. I believe that it's mostly foreign still.
Which means leaving the country.
Yeah, I
Not
believe.
really being reused here.
Yeah, I believe that that's correct, but don't quote me on that one because the last time I heard those numbers was probably half a year ago. So yeah, but we do have domestic and foreign markets still for our materials. Yes.
Is there data available on what you started with, this price by use, like if I have a half a garbage can and everybody has 18, I don't pay the same. Is there data available on how that affects behavior?
Yeah, so there's
Very
actually,
influential to make the town like pay attention.
yeah, so just in case anyone across the room couldn't hear, the question was whether or not unit-based pricing, so that program where I'm only paying for what I throw away as opposed to subsidizing what my neighbor is also throwing away, if that has any measured effect on behavior. And the answer is yes. There have been many towns that have switched to a unit-based pricing program. And those towns, it has been shown that the amount of garbage has been reduced significantly.
Is that out on the website or where's that available?
So I'm not sure if we have any of that data available on our website, but if you look into different towns that have implemented the program, they love to brag about their reductions. So if you do a little bit of research into unit-based pricing or pay-as-you-throw programs, you should be able to find some data just out there. And if you wanted to email me, I could give you some information as well.
Doesn't that encourage more people to put stuff into recycling
Yeah.
that doesn't belong there?
Right.
It does encourage people to put more stuff in the recycling bin, but something that is important with unit-based pricing is enforcement. So looking into the recycling bins and saying, hey, you put something in here that's not supposed to be in there. So it's really a program that takes a lot of, it takes a lot of holistic thinking and planning because people do take advantage of the system when recycling costs less than garbage. So yeah, it really, you do have to pay attention to that stuff.
Yeah, and I asked what equipment do you use, equipment or fleet change that's
So,
needed to do that?
Yeah, it depends on the program that's being done. So some of the programs that have happened in the state have been based on bags. So a volume-based, unit-based pricing program. So they'll have different colored bags, one color for garbage and one for maybe food waste, and then recycling will not have bags. And so basically residents would pay for the number of bags that they use. And that is one way that programs are run, where the amount that you pay is just the number of bags you buy. There's also, I believe, weight-based programs, but those are a little more complicated and I don't know as much about those. So with co-collection programs, which is food waste in one bag, garbage in another, they can be collected in the same truck and then sorted at a facility. And each of those bags can have a QR code on it to show, okay, this is the house that it came from. And so they can do audits on different houses and say, okay, they had a lot of contamination, we're just gonna nudge them in the right direction and say, hey, these things that you had in your food waste bag don't actually belong there, try to put those in your garbage next time. Yeah, stuff like that. There's a lot of intricacies that go into those programs, so yeah. Yes.
When I get a lot of paper in the mail with staples, I've been removing the staples. Do I need to do
Yeah.
that?
So they can handle staples, unless you have a piece of paper that's just like stapled all over it for whatever reason. You would probably
Down the side.
not want to bother with that. But if you have 2 or 3 staples in a few pieces of paper, that's manageable. They can handle it.
Don't tell my husband. I've been
Okay. I won't. Your secret stays here. Yes.
You prompted me because now the envelopes with the little plastic sheeting in the
Yes.
window.
Yeah.
Those are okay?
Those are okay. If you want to take the window out and be super helpful, you can.
But I'm like, am I losing my mind now? Because I'm ripping the little plastic.
Yeah, you don't have to make yourself crazy if you don't want to. You don't have to take the windows out. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna ask you one more question because
Okay.
it's been driving me mad.
Yeah.
You mentioned textiles.
Yes.
The only thing that I can see anywhere, it talks about reusing
Mm-hmm.
or donating.
Yep.
If I have a pair of pants with 20 holes in them, what am I doing with that?
Yeah. So one thing that you can do is make them into rags to reuse yourself if you
But
want
there's,
to.
Again, only so much.
Yeah.
That you
So
can do, and some things are rotten wet rags. It's
Yeah.
horrible material.
Yeah.
Exercise pants that have a hole in them.
Mhm.
I can't use that as a rag.
yeah.
Isn't the bin that is over near Dunkin' Donuts, it
Yeah.
says it's textile recycling company. So
Yeah.
don't they take things with holes?
Yes,
So
so,
that's my question.
yeah.
And I've been avoiding it, because I was like, are they reusing?
Right.
Because I don't wanna donate something that is clearly not reused.
Yeah.
That's the whole
So-
thing itself, and a lot of that ends up in the landfill too. That's a lot of gimmicky things.
Yeah. Textile recycling is a big topic right now, and actually, there was going to be a CCSMM meeting about it, in, actually, next week. But, it was rescheduled for a different event, but we are still having an event about textile recycling, because that is a huge issue right now. With the rise of fast fashion and just so many pieces of clothing being manufactured and sold compared to 10, 20 years ago, textiles have become a much larger component of our waste streams. And so this is a topic that I'm actually very interested in myself, and I've been looking for answers, but hopefully I'll find them when that meeting comes. But our textiles that we're donating can actually go to recycling. So when you donate a piece of clothing, it is checked for quality before it would ever be sold for reuse or donated for reuse. And if it's not up to snuff, if it's not re-wearable and reusable as is, they will send it to be recycled. And the recycling process for clothing is incredibly difficult because of the number of different types of fabrics that exist. So many of the clothes that all of us in this room are probably wearing have plastic in them, as well as maybe cotton or other organic materials. And so those blended fibers, those blended fabrics are very difficult to recycle, because you have to take apart every single component of that fabric in order to be able to reuse it. What did you say?
All the fasteners.
Yeah, so every single piece of whatever item of clothing you're wearing has to be taken apart and sorted correctly before it can be actually recycled. So that is a huge issue, but it is happening. If you put something into your donation bin, it might be reused, it might be donated, but if it can't be, they'll send it for recycling and they'll do their best. It is very difficult, and we're learning more and more about it as we go right now, though. That's a hot topic. Any other questions? Yes?
I have a quick question. So in my town, so like what Fairfield did, a lot of things come down to budgets. Does it cost the town any more to separate the glass from the, because it sounds like a simple solution to what you're saying, but a lot of things are run by budgets. So
Yeah, so most of the towns that do separate their glass are in the HRRA region, so the Houstonic Resource Recovery Association region. So if you wanted to look at their website, I'm sure they have a lot of information about how they run those programs. But the way that they run the program, to my knowledge, is that it's just a drop off at the transfer station. So if you want to separate your glass from your other recyclables, you can bring it to the transfer station and place it in the designated bin, which I don't believe would cost them anything more, because it's going to the transfer station. But yeah, so that's how those programs currently work, and you could definitely find more information on HRRA's website. Yeah. Yes.
I just have a question, actually 2 questions. One is like cat litters, the hard plastics, cat litter containers.
Yeah, so like
laundry
a tub.
detergent containers that are the hard plastics.
Yeah.
What should
So the cat litter containers, they sort of look like this but oversized, right?
And they're very hard plastic.
Yeah, so those would likely be in. It depends on how big they are. If they can fit into your recycling bin easily, like really easily, they're in. But if they're like the size of my bin right here, we can't accept anything of this size. So it needs to be smaller, like on the smaller side, but it can be a few gallons, and that would be acceptable.
And the laundry detergent?
Yeah, laundry detergent jugs are acceptable in the blue bin system, yeah.
And then, just getting back to the peanut butter jars.
Yeah.
You said things were power washed, so I would assume it's best to throw everything in without the lids.
That's a good question, actually. So the peanut butter jar you could throw in with the lid, but yeah, that's actually, I'm not sure about that one.
Isn't it power washed after it's chopped up? After it's all.
Yeah, I think so. Because they wash off the labels, but they also wash off the inside, so I think the power washing happens after it's been chopped up, so, yeah.
So then they wash everything.
Yeah, so you could leave the lid on, yeah. But don't put it in separately, because it probably won't get sorted correctly if you put the lid in by itself. Yeah. Yes.
How about the lids on glass jars? They're the metal lid, but.
Yeah. So lids on glass jars, I would take the lid off, and either throw it in the garbage if it's too small. If it's big enough and it's metal, you could throw it in the blue bin, but if it's plastic, it's probably garbage.
Now, if it's metal and it's big enough, what would constitute big enough?
Bigger than 2 inches, because the 2 inches is what contaminates the glass. Yeah.
And ages ago, it was like if you took a can, if you used a can opener, you took the top off the can, that went into the garbage and the can went into recycling still?
Yeah. If you put the piece of the can that you took off inside the can, usually that's enough. It'll be sorted correctly. So yeah, if you put the piece that you've taken off inside the can, it can go in. But if you don't want to do that for whatever reason, the lid in the garbage and then can.
And like the takeout food containers that are the silver foiling kind of stuff, those are in?
So that's in the same venue as the aluminum foil. It needs to be totally clean, completely dry. And my rule of thumb is still just if food has touched it, I don't put it in the blue bin. But yeah, if you're very confident that you can clean it off completely, it could go in the blue bin.
Plastic tops that came on it can go in?
The plastic top can go in, yeah.
So the difference is because all the glass and the plastic that touch food is because the metal's not power washed? Is that the reason why? Because everything else is food.
I believe that it's just much more difficult to clean the metal, so especially aluminum foil. It's so flimsy. It's really hard to clean that. Even if you're just cleaning it in your sink, it's impossible to get everything off of it. So yeah, the glass and the plastic, it's much easier to clean that, but the metal is tough. Yes.
So you can't put the pill bottles that you get your medicine in.
Yeah, so actually I have a nice container of different bottles that you could look at for whether or not they're 2 inches. So this is actually, I believe, larger than 2 inches by 2 inches, so this can go in. But a pill bottle, an RX bottle, this is too small, and this would contaminate the glass, so this can't go in the blue bin, unfortunately.
If you had a glass separation program in your town? Or no, because it all is the same facility, doesn't it?
Yeah, so everything will go to the MRFs, and the MRFs are regional facilities, so yeah, they'll be sorting glass and everything in those facilities, so yeah. Yes.
Where is the MRF that our stuff in Cheshire goes to?
I am not sure. I'm trying to think of what's in the area. I think that country disposal is in the area, but I'm not sure if they would be who services your town. That would be a question for your public works department or your COG, your council of governments. Yeah.
Answer the question about the plastic bags at the grocery stores.
Oh yes. Can you repeat the question?
Do the bags that they collect at the grocery stores actually get recycled?
Yeah, so your question might stem from the CNN article that came out recently where they put trackers in. Yeah, so there was an article recently where I believe it was CNN put 10 trackers in plastic bags and put them into those grocery store wrap bins, and their results were abysmal. it came back that I believe none of the trackers that they placed in the bags actually went to recycling. They all went to either a waste facility or out of the country or somewhere that they didn't belong. And so the RAP program has responded to that article, and they took all of the stores that were participating and that had a tracker, they took them off of their list of acceptable places until they remedy the situation. So yeah, we need people doing that kind of research and exposing the flaws in the system and the people who are taking advantage of the system. And so when stuff like that happens, I can't guarantee that the system is working correctly, because I'm not there. I don't know exactly what every single person is doing, but most of the time, hopefully, it is getting recycled. And there are a lot of programs that in Bristol, I believe, that they have, it's either Bristol or New Britain, they have a program where they partner with, I forget what company it is, but there's a company that they collect wrap like that, and for every, I think it's 1 ton of that material they collect, the town gets a free park bench that is partially made from that material. So I don't know if you've ever seen those benches that are made of like that really weird plastic material. A lot of that plastic wrap that we're trying to recycle does actually get made into new items. It's just, you have to find the right program and have some faith, and hopefully they're doing the right thing. Yeah.
Real quick, so I know we don't use plastic bags in Connecticut, but at CVS, they give you these plasticky kind of bags, and I don't know if you've ever gotten one from CVS. It's very plasticky.
Are they plasticky, but they seem like really durable? Like you could really,
but
yeah.
they're a plastic feel to them.
Yeah.
So,
So
those could be recycled, or I don't know how they get around.
is
that,
it sort of a woven material, or is it really smooth?
No, it's really smooth. It's
Yeah.
like, it's almost like a heavy plastic.
So in Connecticut, the law that we have that bans plastic bags, I say with heavy quotes, it bans bags that are of a certain weight, so that have a certain thickness. And so those bags are likely just a high enough thickness that they are considered reusable.
But can they be recycled?
It depends on the material they're made of. So actually, this is a great point. The wrap program, the type of plastic wrap that they can take is actually limited. So if you have a bag that's like a pretzel bag that sort of is crunchy, even though it is made of plastic and it's film material, that is out. That does not go into the wrap program. It's not the right material for them to be able to recycle it. It's only the bags that pass what we call the thumb test, where if you have the bag and you can push your thumb through it and it stretches instead of crackling or breaking, that material can go into the wrap program. And if I'm thinking of the correct type of bag, I believe that those pass the thumb test, where it's sort of hard to pull them apart, but they will stretch rather than breaking. So yeah, that's
So
the
they can go in
testing
the
recommend.
wrap.
Yes, the wrap program at different stores.
Emma?
Yes.
I'm going to call.
Yeah.
And call, and you
We're
can
cut
hang,
off.
you can definitely I want everyone to take a little step back there. And speaking of zero waste, we have plates and napkins and utensils that get washed. We do not waste here at St. Peter's. So,
Great work.
and people brought in food, so please take some. Eat some. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.